everybody, my name is Jukebox and welcome to a new series on the channel. So in the video before the previous one, at the end of that video, I asked you guys that if you guys would be interested in a Redstone tutorial series. Now, I didn't get too many replies on that one. That's okay, because I figured that since this is a new series and a new idea, you guys would probably be interested in it. With that being said though, if you actually think that this is a horrible idea, let me know down in the comments, because I don't want to make anything that you guys hate. But also, if you like this series and think this is going to be a good one, also let me know down in the comments and leave a like on the video. So the basic concept of this series is that we have all these components today, and I'm going to be teaching you how this works. And as each episode goes, we're going to be upping the difficulty, or I guess the complexity of the redstone contraptions that you will learn. And I'm going to be teaching you all of these, and by the end of the series you should be a little bit of a redstone pro. Now, why am I doing this series? Because if you don't know, I'm not that good at redstone, and I can't build walking houses or working computers in Minecraft, but I can do the basic essentials that I need. And my goal for this series is that you can learn that by yourself by watching this series. So yeah, that is my goal. And before we get into the series and this video, there's a few things I need to mention. So first things first, yeah, as I already mentioned, the first thing, don't expect anything to be massively complicated, okay? And second, this video in specific and this episode in specific was inspired by the man, the legend, the Redstone wizard, Mumbo Jumbo. So I think about 2 years ago, he did a video like this where he explained every single component in the Redstone tab. And well, he did that, and he's a really good explainer. I would definitely recommend checking him out. He will be in the description, his channel, and the video. Check it out. But he did that in Java edition, and well, there's a little bit difference in Java and Bedrock. And since this is a Redstone tutorial series, we have to start up from the base up. So thank you for Mumbo for giving this inspiration for this video. But with that being said, let's hop in to the components. So to start our list, we have ourselves the Redstone Dust, the most iconic and the most useful redstone component in all of Minecraft. So what is a redstone dust? A redstone dust is basically the real-life equivalent to wires. So if you can see here, I'm going to put down a redstone power source in the middle. I'm going to explain this in a little bit. I'm going to put down a redstone dust next to it. You can see it turned orange. That means that this is getting powered from this redstone source. And you can also see that this is connected to this source because it is a line rather than being the normal cross it is. So this redstone dust is taking power from this redstone source, and it can actually convey that power as far as it can based upon the signal strength of a power source. So in this case, this redstone torch is giving off a signal strength of 15. So if you take this redstone line and stretch it out long enough, you can see on the 15th block, we have ourselves no power. You can tell that because a default redstone dust is the same color as this one, and this one has no power. So meaning that this one has no power. Redstone dust can take the power from a source and convey it in basically all the cardinal directions, as you can see here. But redstone dust can't take any signals from a source in a diagonal directions. As you can see here, these two aren't being powered from this redstone torch, but that is a really simple solution to fix, because you see, redstone dust can actually connect to every single component in the game. So you can see here, it's connected to itself and the redstone torch. Likewise, you can imagine if I put a redstone component next to it, it gets powered and it activates, basically, as you can see here. So yeah, that was basically the redstone dust. But one last thing you have to know about before we move on is that if a redstone dust is powered, it powers the block that it's on and the block that it's next to, like this block, with a soft powering. Now, I'm not going to explain what soft powering or hard powering or basically any kind of powering is in this episode, because I think you guys should have a clear head by the end of the episode which I don't think even it will. So powering will have its own episode in the next one. Moving on. So moving on, we have ourselves the Redstone Repeater. Now you could say that this is an upgraded version of the Redstone Dust, but there are some differences between the two. So for example, if I put a Redstone Torch down and put some repeaters next to it, as usual, like the Dust, it powers up. But there's an immediate difference that you can probably spot if you have been paying attention. So if I put down a Redstone Dust here, you can see that it is a cross, but more importantly, it's open from all the cardinal directions, meaning that you can power it from every single cardinal and it will output it from all the other 3 available spots. And if you can see here, a Redstone repeater has only 2 sides to it, meaning that it can take out inputs from only one side and it can output from only one side. Now this is really useful in some situations, but in some situations it is not. Another thing that is custom to the Redstone repeater is its inbuilt delay system. So meaning that if you give a delayed repeater some power, it will power a little bit later, like so. A single repeater has a delay up to 4 ticks. Ticks are just basically Minecraft's way of detecting time. 1 tick is 1/10 of a second in real life time. So yeah, in one repeater you can have up to 4 ticks of delay, and you can just do that by right clicking it. So this is on default it's on 1 tick, but you can turn it up by right clicking like 2, 3, and 4. If that's not enough for you, you can tile the ticks by just putting more repeaters, and the signal will be delayed like that. Another thing that is custom with the repeater is its locking mechanism. So if you can see here, this repeater's second torch, that's the wording for it, is like bedrock. And well, if you know anything about bedrock, it's not movable, but you can delay it even if it's locked. So how is this useful? Well, if you have a repeater like this and you just power it, I don't think I can pull this off, but if there's power, right, and I'm not able to do it. Or am I? Let's see if I can do this. Okay, I'm not able to do it now, but if you have a powered repeater and you lock it, that repeater will stay locked even if it's not powered until you update it by removing the lockness. So if you can see here, this repeater is getting powered, but it's not firing because it's locked in its original state. This isn't super useful, but I guess it's better to know. And one last thing, like the Redstone Dust, but actually not like the Redstone Dust, if you give a repeater some power, on the output side, if there's a block, this block is getting hardly powered. Now again, I'm not going to explain how hard powering or basically any kind of powering works, but yeah, just keep that in mind when we talk about this in the next episode. So moving on to our next one, we have ourselves the Redstone competitor. Now you can see that this is on a cyan wool, making it different, and it is different because this thing has a lot of things which are a lot complicated than these ones. I mean, these ones are complicated enough, but this has a lot of special properties by itself. So this is going to have its own episode dedicated to explaining what it is and how it works. So on the next on the list, we have ourselves our first power source, the Redstone Torch. Now you got a glimpse of how it works in that section, but yeah, that's basically how it works. The Redstone Torch is a power source. It gives off power signals in all the cardinal directions around it, like that. If I can place it, that is. There you go. It's powering every single one here. It does not give up a signal on the diagonals, which is true for every single power source in the game. So I'm not going to be specifying that anymore. No power sources give off diagonal power. Another thing that the Redstone Torch does is that it powers the block it's on top of. If there is any, it is getting hardly powered. Now again, I'm going to mention this throughout the video, but this is probably the last time. I'm not going to mention any kind of powering. Wait for the next video. And that's basically it. If you put any kinds of components next to the Redstone Torch, it also gets powered. Oh, I forgot to mention one more thing. The Redstone Torch is a toggleable power source, meaning that, you see, if here it's giving out power in every single direction like that, as per usual. You saw this before, but if you don't want the Redstone Torch to give up power, you can actually turn it off. To depower, or I guess turn off a Redstone Torch, you need to power the block that it's sitting on. So that can be literally everything. This is the next one, but I'm going to use it now. This block is getting powered, meaning that this Redstone Torch is depowered. Okay, moving on to the next one. I really didn't need to do that cut, but I guess I did anyways. We have ourselves the lever, which is the most easiest one to understand in this video. So here we go. A lever is another power source, as you saw again there. It has two states, on and off. It can be only on and, I guess, turned on and off by the player. A lever powers the block that it's sitting on with a hard power. It also powers the block it's top of, if there is any, with it hard powering. Oh, sorry. That's not how it works. It powers any components that is on top of, but it does not hardly power or softly power any if there is any on top of. Again, likewise, you can place this on next to a block. I meant on the side of a block. That works too, and it will power the block behind it like that, and it powers any kinds of components that it's hardly powering the block, or if it is just next to. Okay, I made that way more complicated than it needed to, but moving on. So moving into our first movable power source, we have ourselves the Redstone Block. Now the Redstone Block is like these lever and the Redstone Torch, but it's unlike them because, well, it's a complete one-by-one block. So that means it can be pushed around with pistons. I'm going to get into pistons in a little bit, but as you can see here, it's movable. Lever and Redstone torches aren't movable because, as you can see here, they are way too small, and if you push them with a piston, they just break. So another thing that's different with the Redstone Block is that, unlike these lever and the Redstone Torch again, it cannot be toggled, meaning that it's an always active redstone source. You see here, it's always active. You cannot unactive, or I guess depower a redstone block. One last thing before we move on to the next one is that a redstone block cannot hard power any blocks around it. So meaning that the only thing that it can power is the components it's adjacent to. So for example, that piston, that piston, that piston, that piston, the one above it, and the one below it. Those are the only 6 that it can power, unlike the lever and the Redstone Torch. Yeah, so it's kind of useless, but at the same time it's kind of useful. Next up, moving into our first niche redstone component, we have ourselves the Redstone Lamp. Now, as it niche, well, it has only one purpose, that is to just turn on and turn off. That gives us a light, and well, it isn't super useful. It probably is only going to be useful if you want to have a disc lighting. So yeah, one fun thing about Redstone Lamp is that they actually need direct power. So if you see here, I'm going to put some Redstone Dust not connected into them and power it, they're not going to get powered. But if we place, I guess, a piston there, however, it is going to get powered. As you can see here, it's redirecting the power to it. But for a Redstone Lamp, you have to redirect the power into it. One last thing to note before we move on is that Redstone Lamps actually have delay that we talked about on repeaters. Redstone Lamp takes 1 tick of delay to open up, or I guess start, or light up. I can't get the words. And 1 tick of delay to 2 ticks of delay rather to turn off. So keep that in mind. You can't have super fast disc lighting, but it is what it is. Now yourselves a rather survival friendly and survival useful actually, and it is also creative useful. What am I doing? Creative use. Okay, this is getting way too much. A creative useful component, the hopper. Now, what is the hopper? It is basically the real life equivalent of pipes. So it takes any kinds of item and it puts it into any kinds of container if it is below it. So if you can see here, I'm going to put this redstone lamp in. It takes it out of this chest and puts it into this chest. And that is the basic, I guess, use of the hopper. There are some exceptions for this. However, if you have yourself a redstone torch behind that hopper or any kinds of powering methods behind the hopper will actually be locked, meaning that it can't take any items from the container above, or it can't give the items to the container below. As you can see here, I'm going to put this grass block in, it won't get sucked, and if I put this grass block in here, it won't get sucked either. The hopper does not need a container either. If you have a normal hopper that's sitting out in the open, you throw an item into it, it's just gonna have that item. And if there's nothing below, it won't give it to anyone. So that's the basic use of the hopper. So now we have ourselves our first rail. This is the activator rail. To make it, I guess, activated, pun intended, you have to power it in a certain way. So most people do, I guess, lever under the block or a redstone torch. In fact, here we are using the hard powering mechanism of a redstone torch, but again, we are not going to be talking about that today. So there are only two uses of an activator rail. The first one being not that. The first one being if you are on a railroad and you just you're going, sorry, not that key, you'll get ejected from the minecart and you'll fall off. And the other use is to just set off TNT minecarts which go kaboom. We don't need to see that because, well, we have a lot more to see in this place. Now we are being brought to the buttons. So there's a lot of kind of buttons. Have a look. These are all the kinds of buttons, but they can only be sorted into the two, the wooden button and the stone button. So the wooden buttons are basically all of these apart from the stone button and the polished blackstone button. Those are considered the stone buttons. So what are the uses of buttons? So as you saw previously, the redstone torch, the lever, not the redstone block, but yeah, those two give a constant output, meaning that if they're turned on, they will just give the signal forever. As you can see here, the signal does not stop. But for the button, however, if you press it, after a short while, it will turn off, as you can see here. So the delay between that is, on a wooden button, it is 1.5 seconds or 15 redstone ticks. And for the stone button, it is 10 redstone ticks and 1 second. I really struggled there. As you can see here, it's a little bit shorter than this, and both of them have the exact same properties. So moving on, we have ourselves the tripwire hook. Now the tripwire hook is basically useless on survival. Single player, but if you're on multiplayer, it might be useful. So it is basically a trap mechanism. So you have to have two tripwire hooks in a straight line. You can have the line 40 blocks apart, but you probably won't be using that fire mechanisms, but yeah, it can be 40 blocks apart. So you have to have two on the side of blocks. You cannot place them on the top of blocks, and you have to have string in between them like that. You can see they get connected, and if you stand on the string here, it makes a sound and it gives off a redstone signal behind that block. Now let's see if I can show you that. There you go, that redstone dust you can see there, it is powered. Yeah, that's basically it. But if you think you're smart and you think like, okay, I can see the string, he can't fool me, my friend, I don't have any, but you probably do, and I'm gonna break the string with my hand. If you do that, have a look here, the signal is still gonna be I guess given. The only way you can avoid this is to break the string with a shear. You see, that did not give any kinds of signal. So yeah, that's basically tripwire hooks in a nutshell. Now we have another niche item, the daylight sensor. I mean, it literally has everything in its name. It is the real life equivalent of solar panels. It can detect the daylight, and if it's on daylight mode, it gives a signal strength of 15 based upon that if it's the day. And it alters between the signal strength depending on the time of day. So yeah, that's really cool. But if you think that I don't need day, I need night, you can also detect that. And so just right click on that and it will turn into night. So if I just do time set night, as you can see, the signal will power up then. So it's kind of useful for some redstone contraptions, but most of the time, not so much. So now we have ourselves a genuinely useless one, the jukebox. The jukebox can play music discs, so like this, and you just have to put it in by using the right click button. And if you have a music disc in a jukebox, it gives off a comparator signal. Now I said we're going to be mentioning comparators a little bit later on the series, but this is so useless rather, that I had to mention this because that was its only use. So moving on to another one, which is a little bit more useful than the other one. We have ourselves the Lectern. Now the Lectern, for the weird card there, I had to get myself a written book. As I was saying, the Lectern is a weird art because it can it can hold a written book like that, and based on the written book, you can read it in the Lectern, and it will give off a signal using a comparator on how many pages you are on. Now, I'm gonna give you guys a tip because the the comparator actually gives off a signal based upon how much percentage you are on the book. Now, that is a really weird thing to have to calculate just in game, and really I don't like to do that. So even if you plan on like writing only one page of the book, just fill out the complete book. You won't regret it. Anyways, so we have ourselves a written book. We have 15 pages, and well, based upon which of the pages are open, it will give a higher signal. Now basically this is not the most useful thing in the world, but it's a nice thing to have, I guess. Moving on. Oh boy, now we have an interesting one. We have ourselves TNT, the most, I guess, explosive thing in the whole world. TNT is an redstone component which just blows up if you give it any kinds of redstone power, or you just power it with a lead and steel. It has 40 ticks of fuse time and 2 seconds in real life time. I really didn't need to do that. Okay, moving on. We only had ourselves an item frame. So an item frame is not necessarily a redstone component, but it has some nice, I guess, what do you call it? Properties, that's the word. Anyways, as I was saying, the item frame has some nice properties which can be used in some sneaky ways. So an item frame can hold any kinds of item in the game, and if you have a comparator behind that, it can detect what kind of state your item is in. So here I just put the item in, and you can actually rotate it by right clicking on the item. As you can see, it's on the second stage, the third stage, and if you can see on the back on how much I rotated, it gives off a higher redstone signal. As you can see, it's getting higher, and eventually we're going to actually reach 7. Now, having 8 stages, why does it only give off 7 redstone signals? That's because obviously the first one is number 1, as you see here. Okay, now I think we're done with the right side. Now we're going to be moving on to the left side. One thing to know before we get into that, you might be wondering, why did the scale of time just went up by a little bit? That's because the video is getting a little bit longer than I would like it. Okay, left side, here we go. On the left side, we have ourselves these two boys. Now, these two absolutely revolutionized the door industry after the introduction of honey blocks. That really sounds like a company went into billionaire status. Anyways, that's not the point. So these two are pistons and sticky pistons. These are some, I guess, unique capabilities that they can do. As you probably saw earlier on, the piston can actually extend, meaning that it can push any block that is in front of it, like that. And it moves the blocks around. But a normal piston, as you can see, just pushes the block in front, but it can't retract it. But a sticky piston, on the other hand, if there's a block in front of it, it will extend with the block, and if you take away the power, it will retract with the block. That's basically it, but these two are really important. Remember them. Now you have ourselves the dropper. Yes, obviously I remember that 100%. Anyways, the dropper is a really simple one to understand. The basic thing that it is that it just drops items out. So there's some rails in there. I'm going to power it. Any kinds of power works, and if I just power it, you see the power will go out, meaning that the item will be dropped. Now, this isn't exactly how the dropper works. The dropper actually works based upon the pulses. So if you put a button on top, because as I've already taught you, buttons give off not a consistent signal. Rather, they give off a signal that goes for a little while and then goes out. As you can see here, that the rail was dropped. That's basically how it works, but you can do it with a lever, but it works on the falling edge rather than the opening edge. Okay, so moving on to the dispenser, they basically have the same functions as the same, because if you put anything in, power it with a lever or anything, things will be dispensed to you. But the dispenser is different, as in that there's a little bit more capabilities that the dispenser can do. It has some special abilities, as in that if you put in something like a water bucket or a lava bucket or cows, I'm gonna show you this in like progressive order. So we have some water in that dispenser. If I power it, okay, there we go. You have to pulse it, but as you can see, water spills out from the dispenser and it goes absolutely everywhere. But if you pulse that again, that it retracts. So that's an interesting fact about the dispenser, that it can do a little bit more than the dropper over there. As you can see here. Oh, sorry. Give me a second. And if you even have, sorry, not that. If you even have spawn eggs, which you can't get in survival, and you put it in and you power this, the mob will respawn based upon if there is any. So yeah, these are basically the same, but the dispenser can do a little bit more than the dropper. Okay, so now we have ourselves this weird looking boy. Believe it or not, this guy absolutely revolutionized the complete Redstone era. It brought it into something that we didn't expect before it came, and now most of the YouTubers can't even imagine Redstone without it. So this is the observer. This has some really nice features, but again, like the comparator, it is a little bit on the complicated side, so it will be having its own episode in the near future. But yeah, this is really important. Keep an eye out for it. So now we have ourselves these two rails. So like the previous one, this one needs to be powered in need of this to work. So give me a sec. So I have set up myself a roller coaster, a really flat one at it. But if you can see, this is a power drill, and the function of this is to boost your speed as you go along it. So if you can see here, I'm gonna hop into this minecart, go forward using this key, and I don't know if you'll notice, but my speed got boosted by a little bit. I mean, nowadays it doesn't do too much, but in the earlier days it used to swoosh you through the air. Okay, moving on to the next one. Among all of the three rails, this is probably the most useful one. Oh, I should have set it up. Give me a sec again. So this is the Detector Rail. So I'm not sure if you're gonna be able to notice this one, but hopefully you do. So if I just go forward, as you see, as we went over that rail, it powered this block and powered this repeater. That's because the detector rail detects if there is a minecart on top of that block. As you can see here, the minecart is sitting on top of it, and that's powering this detector rail, powering this block. It's doing a hard power, and that's why this repeater is being powered. Okay, so that's all the rails, and now we're going to be getting into this pressure plates. Let's see how fast I can do these pressure plates. Okay, so first of all of these pressure plates have in common that if you, the player, or any kinds of mob stands on top of them, each one of them will fire. So if I stand on the wood one, it fires. If I stand on the stone one, it fires. the gold it fires and all the iron it fires. But there are some differences between all the fours. Okay, so the wooden pressure plate has something interesting, as in that, like, you declare if you stand on it, it gives a signal, but even if an entity is on the pressure plate, it also gives a signal. So watch this. The lava bucket is in entity form and it's sitting on the pressure plate, but that's also giving a redstone signal. Now this isn't too useful, but if you're clever, not like me, you can use this to make a 5-minute timer. You see, items in entity form, when they're on the ground, they have 5 minutes to despawn. So if you just dispense an item on top of that pressure plate, it will despawn after 5 minutes, giving you a 5-minute timer. That's it. Okay, moving on to the next one, we have ourselves the stone pressure plate. So it's basically the wooden pressure plate, and the only thing that's different is that it cannot detect any entities sitting on top of it, so it only has to be you or any kinds of mob. Or yes. Okay, so moving into these two, which are probably the most useless of them all, but I'm still gonna be showing you how they work, because if you're crazy enough to make them work, you're an absolute mad lad. So sorry for the weird cut there, I had to do something. Okay, so first of all, we have ourselves the gold light-weighted pressure plate. So that's a weird name, but so how it works is that it detects how many entities are sitting on top of it. So like the wooden pressure plate, entities can be items. So if you can see here, I'm gonna dispense a lot of items like these cows, and you see there was a lot of a big signal here, but after a short while they got into one. Why is that? So you see, when like a lot of items are sitting on the ground alone, or I mean, I guess if they're the same item, after a little while they bunch up, which in the gold pressure plate standards makes them one item. Really makes sense, gold pressure plate. Well, I mean, that makes it a little bit useless, but it still works for mobs and still works for players, so it might not be that useless. Okay, so moving on to the heavy pressure plate, the iron one. It basically has the same, I guess, idea from the gold one, as in that it also detects how many entities or items are on top of it. But you see, like the hopper I mentioned in the previous Redstone video, it has 3 different signals based upon how many entities, mobs, or players are sitting on top of it. So I don't know the exact amounts, but after a certain point, one item becomes 2 or 3. Now, as you can see, I don't remember how many 1 or 2s or 3s are, so this is a bit more useful than this one. Okay, now moving into the last few. By the way, you might be noticing a bit more ums, r's, buts, and a little bit more speed. I mean, I recorded this once, like before doing this, I was just about to hit finish and then my power went out. So this is the second time recording the left side. Anyways, I thought I would just mention that. So first of all, we have ourselves the trap chest. Now, this is, again, one of those things that are almost useless in survival. Sorry, not survival, I mean single player, but I mean, you could still use it, but it's mostly going to be used for multiplayers. So how does it work? So you see, you have a trap here, you have it set up, you open this chest, and I don't know if you could catch that. There you go. That redstone dust powered. So when you open a powered, I really can't talk. When you open a trap chest, it gives off a signal strength of 1. Now you can multiply that by using repeaters. So yeah, you have that signal, you connect that up to some pistons, make your friend go and fall to their death. Now this, I mean, again, useful for multiplayer, which I don't have any friends for. One more interesting thing that this trap chest has is that the interesting fact is that if you have any items going into a trap chest like this, and you open the chest while the items are going in, you see the items are not flowing in. That's because when you open a trap chest, the items in this are locked visually, but the items are still flowing into the chest. So if I open, go out and go back in, you see it was at 12, now it's at 16. If I go back out, go back in, now it's at 19. So it updates every time you go out and you go back in. Okay, so next up we have ourselves a even more useless one, at least for me. So we have ourselves the Noteblock. Now the Noteblock is basically I guess what you play music with. Hear this. You heard that? So the Notebook plays a tune based upon what block it's on. So here we have ourselves a pillar block. So that's why it's playing this kind of sound. But if you had, like, say nothing, it will play something like this. And there are also a lot more tunes to this, but I mean, I'm not bothered enough to show you this, and I'm musically deaf. Not really, but I mean, I can't play music. So yeah, that's how it works for all the musical people. That's how you do it. Now we have ourselves the most recent addition to Redstone, the target block. This was added in the 1.16 Nether update. Really does not have anything to do with the Nether, but hey, it is what it is. So the target block, as you can probably imagine, it's a block that you target at. So to do that, you can do any kinds of projectiles. I'm going to be doing snowballs. So you want to hit it wherever you want. It gives off a signal. It gives a stronger signal based upon how close you are to the bullseye. So I mean, I haven't pulled out all the 15s, but if I had it, that probably would have been a bullseye. Now this is, I mean, really useful in some situations, but really isn't in some others. Now we have ourselves something that you guys are probably a lot more familiar with than these all others, because this is the Redstone Ore. Now you've probably seen this a lot more than these, because in survival you have to get redstone from Redstone Ore, ores, which you need to make a witch farm for. So if you stand on a Redstone Ore, it starts glowing, and it does not stop glowing until you are not on it or it's broken. So why is this useful? I mean, it does not even give off a redstone signal, but the only thing this is useful for, because this gives off a redstone, or I guess block update, which a observer can observe. Now I said I wouldn't discuss about this, and that's the only thing that I'm going to discuss about. So moving on to the final two, we have ourselves the sticky duo. They have absolutely ruled over the redstone category for the last, I guess, I mean, ever since this one was added. So I mean, you might be wondering, why am I actually freaking about these two? Let me explain. So first of all, we have ourselves the slime block. So the slime block is, well, bouncy and sticky at the same time. So if you fall from a, I really can't talk. Again, I'm mentioning this way too much. But if you fall from a high place, you get trampolined on by the slime block. Now, you can stop this by just holding crouch while falling. It does not bounce you. That's not the useful part. I just thought I'd mention it. Slime blocks also make you go slow when you're walking on them. But the main thing that I was going to mention is that slime blocks stick to every single block in the game apart from these three blocks right here. Crying obsidian, obsidian, and any kinds of terracotta. These do not stick to slime blocks. As you can see here, I'm going to put down a obsidian block next to it, and I'm going to put down a sticky piston. Nah, I'm just going to do a normal piston, and I'm going to stick this to this slime block, and then I'm going to power it. See what happens. The obsidian block is actually not going to get moved by the slime block, but if that was any kind of other block in the game, for example, a grass block, it actually would have been moved along with it. So watch this. Oh, give me a sec. As I was saying, take a look at this. This grass blocks moves along with it. So you might be wondering why why was I freaking out so much? Well, I mean, that wasn't the reason. But first, before we get into that, we have to introduce the newcomer, honey blocks. So honey blocks have well, some differences with slime blocks? Well, first of all, slime blocks are a little bit bouncy. These are absolutely sticky. So watch this. I look at this. I cannot jump at all. I mean, I can jump a little bit, but that does not help with anything. So this is a normal jump. You can see I can jump a complete block, but in slime blocks I cannot. You can also slide down from a You can slide down from a honey block, like this. Yes, there you go. But that's not, again, not the main thing that I was gonna mention. I just thought, why not? Honey blocks have the exact same features, and at least as of words just do not come to me now, do they? Honey blocks have the exact same features as of connecting. So they can absolutely connect to every single block in the game, and they cannot connect to the obsidian, crying obsidian, or any kinds of terracotta, and they cannot connect to each other. Now, you may be wondering, that's the reason you were freaking out so much? Oh, my friend, you have some things to watch out for. These will be absolutely essential for when we talk about doors, which aren't in this episode, but believe me, you'll have to remember them quite a lot. Yeah, that was all those redstone components. But before we end, I have myself one last thing that I would like to talk about. You see, you might have been coming into this series hoping that I was going to feature command blocks, commands, how do they work? Which, if you work here for that, I'm sorry. This is a redstone only series, and I hope to focus on redstone components and redstone contraptions. Now, you might be wondering, well, command blocks need redstone to power them. Well, you literally can put a lever on the side of it and just power it. That works. The main thing for command blocks are the commands themselves. Now, I know commands pretty much as I know redstone, so if you guys would like a few videos about command blocks and how commands work, let me know down in the comment section below. But with that being said, that was 30 plus redstone contraptions covered in one video. Again, I'm really sorry for the final sections being arms, butts, and ands, and everything, all of them combined. But I mean, what can you do? Like, you're explaining 30 plus things. You can't keep your mind straight. Yes, but one final thing before you go. As you can see, I probably named the series this, Redstone with Red. Now, I thought that was a clever name because, well, I'm red, the redstone is red, and my name is Red Blocks, Redception. So I thought that was a clever name, but if you guys have any cleverer names, let me know down in the comment section, because you guys are much more smarter than me. But with that being said, guys, that was episode 1 of Redstone with Red. I really hope you enjoyed and understood what I was saying. If you did and you would like to see more of this series, leave a like, and if you really want to stick around for other videos from me, make sure to subscribe with notifications turned on. But that's gonna do it for today, guys. I really hope you enjoyed, and I will see you guys in the next one. Goodbye.